showdown in the Commons highlights division across the country and in party ranks. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The top news stories
and conversations that matter to you.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Yeah, about that pipeline.
Yeas pour, 139, 139. Nays contre, 196, 196.
I declare the motion defeated.
The motion that was defeated was a motion from the Conservative Party that called on the Liberals and all other MPs to express their support for a pipeline from Alberta to BC. The maneuver from Pierre Poilievre and his MPs was an attempt to show that there are some Liberal MPs unhappy with Prime Minister Carney's decision to sign an MOU on energy policy with the Conservative government in Alberta led by Premier Danielle Smith. In the run-up to the vote, the Liberals spent a great deal of time calling the Poilievre motion a stunt and saying it didn't reflect the entire agreement between Ottawa and Alberta. So the wording of the motion was changed by the Conservatives, borrowing even more language from the actual MOU. But still, that wasn't enough to get Liberals on the record to say they support a pipeline. Just hours before the vote, the Natural Resources Minister, Tim Hodgson, and the Environment Minister, Julie DeBruisen, were both claiming all Liberal MPs support the agreement with Alberta. But the press gallery wasn't buying that.
As a party, we are united in wanting to make sure that we continue to build Canada, that we build it well, that we take into account climate change in the work that we do, and that we respect Indigenous rights holders. Our party is united on that. And so I won't accept that as a premise for that question. We are united.
You was dividing your own caucus. You don't think there's divisions over that?
No.
So what's divisive? What's divisive is a Conservative government in Alberta signed up for the entire MOU. The entire MOU. The Conservative government in the federal government, the Conservatives are trying to cherry pick, to divide. What they should be talking about is the entire MOU. That is what the government of Alberta signed up for, the entire MOU.
But for those ministers to claim that all Liberal MPs support this entire MOU is not true. For example, current Liberal MP and former cabinet minister Stephen Guilbeault had columns in both the Toronto Star and in La Presse in Quebec, speaking out against the deal. But for the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, the ascent of division in the Liberal ranks was a chance to set the cat among the pigeons, while Prime Minister Carney insists his deal with Alberta is about much more than a pipeline.
Well, let's be honest. He never planned to honor the agreement. Right. He whispered quietly to the Keep It in the Ground Liberal caucus, Don't worry, there will never be a pipeline. We'll delay it until after the election, and then, God forbid, if we win, he says he would kill it altogether. Why can't he say one thing to all Canadians and champion the pipeline with us today?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the MOU between the Government of Canada and the Province of Alberta is about a pipeline. It is about carbon capture and storage. It is about interties with the clean electricity grid of British Columbia. It's about artificial intelligence data centers. It is about an industrial carbon price that works. It is about methane regulations that get methane down 75% so that we can have the lowest emission, low risk, lowest cost oil in the world and build this country.
For the New Democrats, this was an opportunity to speak out not only against a Conservative motion, but also against the Liberals for signing this deal with Premier Smith in Alberta. The New Democrats lost a lot of seats in BC in the most recent election, and this presented the party with a chance to make the case that voters in BC made a mistake. Gord Johns is one of the few remaining NDP MPs from British Columbia.
The motion and the MOU before us today is so alarming. It asks that we support a massive bitumen pipeline from Alberta to the north coast of British Columbia, along with the suspension of the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act. And it asks that we do so without the consent of Indigenous rights and title holders and without the support of the province of British Columbia or the coastal communities who would bear the full risk of an oil spill. We have been here before, Mr. Speaker. Of course, First Nations on the coast have consistently opposed crude oil tanker proposals for more than 50 years. They participated fully in the National Energy Board's joint review panel for the failed Northern Gateway project. Their answer was a definitive and principled no. That hasn't changed.
But for every New Democrat MP, there were a dozen Conservative MPs willing to speak out in favor of a pipeline. Lila Goodrich is the MP for Fort McMurray.
Fort McMurray represented a beacon of hope, prosperity, and an opportunity for a fresh start. To the world's leading oil producers, we're a tough competitor who refuses to lie down. But for far too many politicians in this chamber, we are simply a cash cow, and to the fringe eco-activists, we are the enemy. But to me, Fort McMurray has and will always be home. I was born and raised here, and Conservatives of every stripe have always had our back. They understand that when Fort McMurray works, Alberta works. When Alberta works, Canada works. I will not back down from the politicians in this chamber who seek to landlock and firewall our oil stands. Pipelines and energy corridors are of critical interest and importance for the long-term viability of the Canadian economy. Hope is on the horizon, though, Mr. Speaker. Conservatives are going to do what we have consistently done for decades: support Canadian oil and gas workers, support Canadian oil and gas, and support the Canadian economy. Unlike Liberals, Conservatives are united, and we sure do not have a Keep It in the Ground caucus.
But in the end, the Conservatives also didn't have the votes. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Everything went according to the script today for the Bank of Canada. It held the line on interest rates. No move, no surprise. The overnight rate stays at 2.25%, but why? Sal Guatieri is back with us, senior economist and director at BMO Capital Markets. Great to hear from you again.
Likewise, Rob.
What do you think of the decision, Sal?
Well, as you mentioned, really no surprises either with the policy announcement or the messaging, and that is Bank of Canada is pretty comfortable moving to the sidelines now. It's cut interest rates almost 3 percentage points in 2.5 years, so fairly aggressive course of easing. And there are several reasons now just to move to the sidelines. One is that interest rates are believed to be at a level that will provide some ongoing modest support to the economy. And here's an economy that appears to have avoided a recession. We rebounded quite nicely in the third quarter after shrinking in the second quarter because of the trade war. So it does look like we've avoided a recession. And most importantly, the labor market has really surprised to the upside the past 3 months, creating 181,000 jobs, pushing the unemployment rate back down to 6.5%, so even lower than when we went into this trade war. And then finally, I would say still a little concern, nagging concern about inflation holding above the 2% target. I don't think the bank has all that worried about it. It should move lower, but that at least at the margin is a bit of concern. So clear message, the Bank of Canada is on hold for quite some time.
What explains the resilience in the Canadian economy?
Well, I think you could give some credit to the central bank. Again, cutting interest rates 275 basis points in just over a couple of years. That's pretty aggressive course of easing. And it has brought interest rates to levels that are believed to provide some modest support to the economy. I would also attribute stimulative fiscal policies, especially with respect to getting our economy moving, especially business investment. I think that has certainly improved business confidence to some degree. We should see that showing up in the economic data later, despite ongoing concerns about the trade war, which is kind of the main reason business investment has remained quite weak this year. And really, I would put it down to the Canadian consumer and household. The Buy Canada movement has redirected a lot of money domestically, and that has kept consumer spending growing at a pretty healthy clip through this trade war. So I think for those reasons, the economy is showing a little more resiliency than I believe anyone anticipated, and probably suggests we are headed for better economic times in 2026. Again, assuming we renegotiate the USMCA and a lot of that trade policy uncertainty dissipates.
The overnight rate, as I mentioned, is at 2.25%. This is the last announcement from the Bank of Canada for this year. So 2.25%. How does that compare to, say, your forecast of where you thought we would be by the end of the year? And what do you see happening, say, in 2026 so far?
Yeah, for the most part, the Bank of Canada has kind of stuck to the script. That is, lowering interest rates, not quite as aggressively as initially back in 23 and 2024, but full 100 basis points of rate cuts for this year. They did pause after the spring and through the summer just to see which way the economy and inflation were heading. But they then picked up the pace of easing in the fall when the economy did contract in the second quarter. So very much it stuck to the script of easing policy further this year to provide that much-needed support to the economy during this trade war. As far as looking ahead, we think the bank's on hold now right through next year. I know the market is starting to price in a quarter-point rate increase by this time next year. We don't quite subscribe to that view. We think the Bank of Canada will not raise rates in 2026, probably won't until sometime or well into 2027, simply because of this dark trade policy cloud, which will continue to hang over the heads of Canadian businesses in particular through most of next year. We will have to get some clarity by re-signing or renegotiating the USMCA before a lot of that uncertainty dissipates. So I don't think the Bank of Canada has any intention of raising interest rates for quite some time.
The U.S. Federal Reserve in the United States is expected to cut rates. Is this a case of the U.S. Fed catching up to the Bank of Canada? Why would that bank be cutting rates and ours is not?
Well, the fundamental reason is U.S. policy rates are much higher than Canadian rates. So the U.S. Fed funds rate now is sitting just under 4%. Here in Canada, the policy rate is just over 2%. So it's quite a gap there. I think you could clearly argue that policy rates in the U.S. are still a bit restrictive. They're above so-called neutral levels, still perhaps holding back the U.S. economy. We're seeing that in the housing market in the U.S. Mortgage rates remain elevated and existing home sales still close to 14-year lows. So for that reason alone, I think the Fed has good reason to cut interest rates again today. And on top of it, unlike Canada, where we have seen a rebound in labor markets, in the U.S., at least the latest data from private sector sources suggest ongoing weakness in the U.S. labor market and perhaps a continued upward drift in the unemployment rate. So for those reasons, the Fed is widely expected to cut rates today. Probably will slow the pace of easing in 2026, but we are still anticipating full 100 basis points of rate cuts from the Fed between right now and the year from now.
Thank you for your time. Always great to hear from you, Sal Guatieri. Thanks for your help all year as well. Understanding all of these moves from the Bank of Canada. No move today, though. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
And if you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, Now You Know with Rob Snow. Don't forget our mobile app that will help you hear our show. When you want to listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. That's spelled Seekr. Seeker has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. And Now You Know with Rob Snow is also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So, no move from the Bank of Canada today on interest rates. A rate cut in the United States expected, as we just talked about with Sal Guatieri from the Bank of Montreal. I was actually looking today at how the markets have done so far this year with just a few weeks remaining in 2025, and it's pretty much been happy returns all around. The TSX main index is up 26% for the year, 26%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 11%. The NASDAQ, driven by the AI stocks, up 22% this year for the NASDAQ. The S&P 500 is up 16%. Gold has, gold's been the big winner this year. Gold prices are up almost 60% in 2025. The same can't be said for oil prices, though. Oil prices are down about 20% for the year. And topsy-turvy for Bitcoin, I think, is maybe the best way to describe it. Bitcoin in U.S. dollars down about 2.5% for the year. It reached a high of $124,700 U.S. earlier in the year, back to about $92,000 today. Its lowest level of the year for Bitcoin is about $82,000 U.S. You could buy a lot of Bitcoins, by the way, if you win the lottery. These jackpots just keep growing in Canada. There's still been no winner of the Lotto Max jackpot, but 3 ticket holders are very happy with their consolation prizes from last night's draw. 3 tickets matched 6 out of 7 numbers plus the bonus number to win the second place prize. So that's just shy of $100,000 each. One of those tickets, by the way, sold in Kitchener. So the Lotto Max jackpot for Friday is now sitting at $80 million. $80 million and 14 prizes of $1 million each. How could you not win? That $80 million, by the way, ties the record for the biggest lottery jackpot in Canadian history. There was an $80 million Lotto Max winner earlier this year. The winner was a young married father from Surrey, British Columbia. As for tonight's Lotto 649 draw, the Gold Ball jackpot getting up there as well. $40 million, along with the traditional 649 draw. That's worth $5 million. Again, that draw is tonight. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. Our Newsday panel is coming up with lots to talk about. As the political year is winding down, the House of Commons will probably call it quits. Maybe tomorrow or Friday. Talk about that just ahead. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
It's time for our Wednesday Newsday political panel as we welcome back Chris Day, Senior Vice President at Hill & Knowlton. Welcome back, Chris. Great to hear from you again.
Great to be back with you.
Along with Melanie, Paradis, President at Texture Communications. And welcome back to you. Hope you're well.
I am. Great to be back.
It's good. Well, Melanie, what is your reaction to the way things played out in the House of Commons with the vote on the Conservative motion about pipelines?
So I actually loved this as a tactic by Pierre Poilievre because it put the wedge right into Liberal caucus. We know you don't all agree. We know that Liberal caucus doesn't agree with the Alberta MOU. So let's force you to vote. Now, we can debate whether this was a true win because instead of battling his caucus, Carney got everyone to just vote against it, knowing that he would take some heat for that. But that was probably the only real choice that he had. He clearly could not allow this to go to a vote because of the divisions in Liberal caucus. And look, you get very few opportunities to make the governing party squirm when you're in opposition, and I think this was a smart move by Pierre Poilievre.
Okay. What do you think, Chris?
I happen to agree very wholeheartedly with my friend Melanie, who, I think it's a sign that this OLO has a bit of mojo back. This is something that Pierre is particularly good at doing, is usually using those procedural things that he has at his disposal, rare as they are, to make a point and to create some moments of discomfort. And he did absolutely that yesterday. And in the lead up to yesterday, they had 5 ministers out before the motion was starting to be debated, which is a sign that, everything's fine, nothing to see here. But, it played out predictably, I think, that, they were wedged. They created some messaging space. And then, Mr. Poilievre was able to pivot very quickly, amend the motion, and get a vote. The vote ended predictably. The Bloc and the NDP and the Greens obviously were never going to support it, and the Liberals were whipped their party to vote against as well. But it wasn't without some tension in the caucus, I would imagine.
Okay, so Melanie, explain how for Poilievre and the Conservatives, it's not a loss even though they lost.
Because now they're still going to be able to point and ask questions around how much support do you really have for pipelines? Are you actually, is this just, something that you're doing to save face? Or are you really going to go to bat for a pipeline for this country? Are you going to press the issue further on the tanker ban? And I think that this is going to force a conversation that we're going to have nationally, not just in the House of Commons, but across the country around that tanker ban and its validity. I think that for the past 10 years, BC and the Coastal Chiefs have not had to explain to Canadians why this is important to them. And now they're going to need to do that. I can feel the vibe of Canadians shifting. We've seen the polling. The Canadians want pipelines. This is a significant shift. Even in Quebec, Canadians want pipelines. And so people are going to be asking this question. The job of the opposition is to keep bringing those questions, amplifying those questions of the people into the House of Commons. And I think that you're going to hear a lot more about this over the next couple of months.
Okay. More or less the same question, Chris. How do you win if you lost?
Well, in this particular instance, as with a couple of other things that the Conservatives have been going after the Carney Liberals on, it's going to take time to build a pipeline. There's no actual project right away, and any pipeline is years and years away. That said, this creates an opening to do, as Melanie just said, to plant those questions and sow seeds of doubt, just as he's done on other big files like defense spending and housing and other things that are supposed priorities for the government. So it allows you to sow seeds of doubt on effectiveness, on the ability to get things done in trade negotiations, etc. He's been very good at raising questions about what are you actually doing. And all while there is no proposal, on the table. And, to Melanie's point, it allows him to point out some of the elements of folly in what has been the practice of the last decade. Banning tankers is actually an entire misnomer, in that tankers from Alaska are going along the BC coast all the time. It's banning Canadian oil from getting to global markets, and this allows for that conversation to happen.
What did you think of the Liberal defense of its position, Melanie? And I should say it's been picked up by some in the media as well, that this was cynical, it was silly, it was unserious, it was a stunt from Mr. Poilievre. What do you think about that?
All he did was put their words back in front of them. He directly quoted from the MOU with Alberta and asked them to vote on those words, on their own language. And they chose not to.
Do you agree with that, Chris?
Well, if they're calling their own words cynical and silly, that may spell an early demise for this MOU. But because it is their words being used back at them. And so to vote against it, I mean, they're going to claim that, it was taking certain words out of context and leaving certain parts of the MOU out. That's exactly what they claimed. But ultimately, the wording in that motion was all wording from the MOU itself. And so to vote against it is not a great look, for sure.
All right. When we come back, Canada will soon be down a key player in our discussions with the Trump administration. Kirsten Hillman, Canada's ambassador to the United States, leaving. And rumors of a replacement in the works. Mark Wiseman will ask our panelists about this development when we return. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
With our Wednesday Newsday political panelist, Chris Day from Hill and Knowlton, and from Texture Communications, Melanie Paradis. Chris, what is the significance of the pending departure of Kirsten Hillman, Canada's ambassador to the United States? How big a blow is that right now?
Well, there's probably no one who knows the intricacies of CUSMA and the Canadian-U.S. trading relationship quite like Ambassador Hillman. And there is no good time to lose your trade-focused ambassador in the middle of a trade war. That said, I don't think there's anything more to this than she is utterly exhausted. She's done her time. She was appointed in an interim basis back in 2019 as ambassador, confirmed as the permanent ambassador in March 2020. She was the 2IC for 2 years before that. She has been in Washington for 8 years. And if you think of all the things that have happened in those 8 years, it must be entirely exhausting. So, she served her country with distinction. She, I think, was expecting to be asked to replaced after the last election. She has served under this prime minister as he has tried to navigate the very unpredictable situation in Washington and the U.S. these days. And, I think we all owe her a thanks. We can talk about, whether or not we were suitably prepared for the incoming, Trump administration too, but that's probably not the day for that.
All right. What do you think, Melanie?
Well, I completely agree with Chris. I hope that they reassign Hillman to Fiji or somewhere great where she can relax a bit. She has served the country well. But look, now we're hearing that the replacement might be Mark Wiseman, and all things being equal, let's assume that he is very savvy. He certainly has deep experience, but at the end of the day, this comes down to relationship management and fit. Can he speak Trump? Can he help the Trump administration appreciate our position? Can he get two sides to align on more than we have so far? The CUSMA trade negotiations in 2026 are also going to be done in the shadow of the U.S. midterm elections. Yes, it's in November, but they're going to begin campaigning sooner than you think. And Trump isn't going to do anything in our negotiations that will negatively position him in those elections. And the final thing I want to add is we're also doing this in the shadow of the new national security strategy that just came out last week, where the Trump administration makes really clear that they are shifting away from Europe and refocusing their attention on securing Western hemispheric dominance in every imaginable way. And everything that Canada puts on the table now has to at least speak to that strategy. Our defense spending, our border security measures, Arctic sovereignty investments will be even more important now in that context. But perhaps most importantly, the U.S. has made it clear in the strategy that they want Canada and the Western Hemisphere to eradicate Chinese foreign direct investment in our strategic assets, and that's going to be a challenge.
Okay, let's move along to something else here. Why would the Liberals agree to the Bloc's demand to remove the religious exemptions in the criminal code for hate crime prosecutions? What motivated that, do you think, Chris?
Very crass political savviness that this has really widespread support in Quebec. And this is one of those, really, really interesting instances of, Quebec versus rest of Canada. Friends and colleagues of mine who work in Quebec have said this is one of those issues that a large plurality, if not a majority of Quebecers absolutely supports, and it cross-cuts traditional partisan lines. So, the Bloc position is very much one that is it pulls from, traditional conservative and CAC and Liberal and PQ voters in that province. And so the Liberals have jumped on that.
Plus, the very survival of their anti-8 legislation was at stake. They spent years on that thing. They didn't want to see all of that go down the tubes. I would just add that. Melanie, what do you think was at play?
Well, yeah, politics makes strange bedfellows, right? Like you need to get a certain number of votes in order to get something passed. And so you're going to be willing to consider things that you might have thought previously unconsiderable. I really don't like the idea of this kind of horse trading, though, happening in the shadows. And I think that Canadians deserve to know what actually happened here, who was involved, what are the details. There should be an open debate about this, and we need to know where our politicians stand on hate speech.
Well, yeah, on the religious exemption as well.
Yeah. And whether or not there should be one.
Right. This is one of the, I'm going to be talking about this on Talkback after the news, the religious exemption, whether it should be in there or not. But there are grave concerns, not just from Christian or Catholic organizations, but from Muslim organizations, Jewish organizations, that this could make it open season on practicing one's religion. And citing religious texts and deeply held beliefs. It would have been nice to have some hearings on it and hear from some experts, but every time a meeting was called in advance of this, they canceled the meeting. And now it's been polled finally at a committee meeting yesterday. It was very heated, and they polled it. And now basically it's off to the Senate. It'll be the law of the land by the end of the week. It's really quite remarkable what has happened there. When we come back, I'm going to ask our panelists, name a politician who had a great year and a politician who didn't have a great year. But the caveat is they can't say Carney or Poilievre because those might be the obvious choices. It has to be somebody else. I have a couple of nominees here. I'd like to hear what our panelists have in mind. When we return, this is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Here with Melanie, Paradis, and Chris Day, our Newsday panelists today. And I have asked our panelists to come up with the names of two politicians, a politician who had a great year and a politician who didn't have a great year. And I said, one caveat, you can't say Carney or Poilievre. It has to be somebody else. So I get to go first. And I think somebody who had a great year, maybe a lot of people would not expect this. I'm going to say Conservative MP Andrew Lawton. I mean, there was a time when it was some on the left, their mission to just drive Andrew Lawton out of public life as a broadcaster and everything else. He has since gone on. He's written a few books that have done very well, by the way, including a biography of Pierre Poilievre. Ran for office, won a seat in the election in the London area, and I think he's really found his voice on Parliament Hill, and I would say he's a member of the Conservative caucus to watch. Andrew Lawton, that would be one of my picks. Had a good year, I think. Now, who didn't have a great year for me? Bonnie Crombie, the Ontario Liberal leader, who could never prosecute a case despite volumes of material against the Ford government, just could not mount a challenge as the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party to the Ford nation, lost the election, lost her own seat, and has been forced out of the leadership of the Ontario Liberal Party. They're still looking for a leader. Those are my two. What about you, Melanie? Who you got?
I also have a Conservative MP for my good year, and that's Frank Caputo. He has spent years working on intimate partner violence and trying to change laws to make sure that victims are better protected by our system. And he had a private member's bill on this. The Liberals took much of it in their latest change to the justice reforms that they've introduced. So I think that's a win for Frank Caputo. He's been advocating for tougher laws for intimate partner violence for a long time, and cheers to him for great success there. Intimate partner violence always increases at Christmas statistically, unfortunately. So I think this is an important time of year to be talking about it as well. Who's had a bad year? Stephen Guilbeault. Maybe he's now he is in full descent into irrelevance. The tides, the polling has turned. It's not that the environment isn't important. It's just that it's not as important as very pressing issues around affordability for Canadians. And so he's kind of fallen out of vogue. Maybe he'll return to Greenpeace. I'm not sure. Wish him well.
Okay. All right. In about a minute or so, Chris, good year, bad year?
So the absolute devastation of the environmental and economic legacy aside, I was going to joke that Justin Trudeau had the best year of anyone in federal politics. He got out before being blown out and is now dating Katy Perry. So, good for him.
All right.
But more seriously, I went provincially for good, bad. And I think Wab Kinew, the premier of Manitoba, has had a phenomenal year. Issues that have been important to him and his electoral base, he's moved forward. It looks like there's going to be some real action on in both the environment and the economy there, and specifically the Port of Churchill. And he has become the real leading voice of the left in this country. Bad year, worst year, no good, very bad year. Probably someone looking like Justin Trudeau is François Legault, the Premier of Quebec.
Yeah,
just an absolutely terrible year, and I think he's on his way out one way or the other.
Yeah, not long now for him. October is supposed to be the election. Will he leave before then? That's the big question, I suppose, at this point. Thank you so much to the two of you. Yeah, bye-bye.
All the best.
All the best, yeah. Melanie, Paradis, Chris Day. Talkback coming up next after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. We have a big one today. Religion and secular society. Religion and secular society. Why? Well, because the two are colliding again. It's in the news today at the Liberal government in Ottawa, at the behest of the Bloc Québécois, and in order to secure support from the Bloc Québécois, has removed a long-standing exemption from hate speech prosecution. There's a section in the criminal code, section 319(3)B, and it provides a religious exemption to hate speech prosecution. This is what it says. No person shall be convicted of an offense, the offense being the willful promotion of hatred, if in good faith the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. So on the one side, just to break this down, you had the Bloc Québécois, and it was making the case that this religious exemption needs to go. It lets people use religion as an excuse or hide behind their religious beliefs as a shield in order to say hateful things and to promote hate. And the Bloc told the Liberals, we're not going to support your anti-hate law that you've been working on for years unless you get rid of this exemption. And now the Liberals have agreed to do just that, and that exemption is out. And that's big news. On the other side, you have the Conservatives who call this an attack on freedom of religion. And they have warned that it could criminalize faith. It could criminalize deeply held religious views. That is something the Justice Minister dismisses. Sean Fraser, the Justice Minister from Nova Scotia, Liberal MP, of course. But many faith-based organizations agree with the Conservatives. They have spoken out against the removal of this exemption, including the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council. Both say ending this religious exemption for hate crime prosecutions will have a chilling effect on the freedom of people in this country to practice their religion and to hold deeply, deeply held religious beliefs. So with that in mind, with that as a backdrop, we want to go kind of big picture on this topic today with your help at 1-833-668-2577. Faith, religion, and how it collides in an increasingly secular society. We want to ask you this. Should faith or religion have any influence on our laws and on our institutions in this country? Or should one neutral and secular standard be the norm with our laws and institutions? Because it's not just about what is and what isn't hate speech and whether a firmly held religious belief or words in a religious text can be used as a defense against hate speech. It's really a much bigger question than that. And there are many more issues in addition to that particular issue when you really think about it. Should public schools or public institutions have prayer rooms? They're getting rid of those in Quebec. Gone from public schools, universities, other public buildings. The government there is banning public prayer. No prayers in the streets. No prayers in parks. Should provincial governments fund Catholic schools and only Catholic schools? They do that in some provinces, like Ontario. Should any government money go to any religious schools? That was an issue in the Alberta teacher strike. Should hospitals with a religious history be allowed to deny dying people MAID because of religious objections? That's been in the news before, particularly in British Columbia. In short, what should be accommodated in the name of religion and what shouldn't? Take, for example, this hate crime religious exemptions. Say a preacher, doesn't really matter the religions. Say a preacher gives a sermon and speaks out against gay marriage and cites scripture while doing it. Should that preacher be subjected to a hate crimes prosecution? The Justice Minister says it would never come to that, but that's what some faith-based organizations are worried about. Others say no. That person shouldn't be allowed to hide behind their religion and say hateful things. That's just one example. In Quebec, much has been made of some of the laws that the government of Quebec has named in the name of secularism. The government banned public servants from wearing religious symbols in the workplace. Teachers, bus drivers, police officers, clerks in office buildings can't wear things like hijabs, kippahs, turbans, crucifixes, all prohibited. And the government has been accused of state-sponsored racism and of violating charter rights using the notwithstanding clause. In Ontario, there have been calls for years to end funding for Catholic schools. For the longest time, secularists, minority faith groups have argued it's discriminatory, outdated, a privilege given to one religious denomination. And the case has been made. Some Catholic schools are not inclusive. They won't fly pride flags, and they won't allow things like gay-straight alliances in the schools. There's a lot to unpack here. I just want to ask everyone, let's just be respectful as we talk about this today. Religion can always be a touchy subject, but it doesn't mean we're going to shy away from it. But this is our question today. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Should faith or religion have any influence on laws and institutions in this country? Or should one neutral, secular standard be the norm for laws and institutions? Where do you stand? Religion in the courts, religion in public services, education, healthcare. Let's dig in with your help. 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make you a priority today. I'm Rob Snow. This is Talkback. It's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So again, we're asking, should faith or religion have any influence on our laws, our institutions in this country, or should we have a more secular standard when it comes to laws and institutions? A more secular society. What do you think? Think religion in the courts, religion and public services, religion in the education system, religion in the healthcare system. Just where are you coming down on these things? 1-833-668-2577. So many ways to look at it. Mitchell is in Calgary today. Hello, Mitchell.
Hello.
Hi, Mitchell.
Hello.
Yeah. What's your opinion, Mitchell?
Yeah, thanks for the line here.
Yeah,
I wanted to contribute first. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine, Mitchell. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, what I wanted to contribute first is I think the question is a little bit ill-framed. I understand where you're going with it. You're going with it, but I kind of don't think that secularism, the mainstream secular society that we live in Canada, is actually neutral. It's not an in-between ground between the different religions, Catholicism, Islam, various Protestantisms. It's not in between those. It's yet another system of ethics and morals that kind of competes with them. A lot of times there's obviously lots of overlap between them, but we can't say, let's exclude religion, let's just be secular. That's still choosing a certain system of moral frameworks, of ethics, above other ones. And maybe we need to do that, but let's not frame it this way. I feel like it's unfair to do so.
Okay.
And the second
What would be a
point
better way to frame it? Because I gave it a lot of thought on how to try and frame that question. Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the tone you brought in what I've heard so far. I think it's difficult, but we have to respect everyone's own ethics, everyone's own morals, to the degree that they don't infringe upon everyone else's. But it's not true that secularism is somehow different, somehow privileged compared to a religious viewpoint. I think it's just another type of religion, almost, maybe excluding God, but it's another way of interpreting our place in the world and morality. So how we go forward, where we have people with different moralities, is very complex. It's not as simple as to say, let's exclude religion, now we've got our neutral ground. I don't think it's that easy.
Okay, let's take this example. Let's take this example yesterday, like a real life example here. Okay, where you have a government that has had a long-standing clause in the criminal code that says if you have a deeply held religious belief or you're citing from a religious text, you can't be prosecuted for a hate crime. How and now that's gone. As that safeguard, if you view it that way, has been stripped away, and there's concern in religious circles about that. What do you think about that?
I appreciate the question. I understand, I think, where we're coming from this. The issue I hear when I hear that is, who gets to define what hate is? It doesn't take a lot of imagination to view the things we view as hateful today. Maybe a few decades ago, the people concerned about what we generally value in modern secular society, they might have considered that hateful, depending on who's kind of in charge of the general mainstream opinions. So we have to be careful about that. If we say that's hateful now, we're not allowed to say that, you're not allowed to have this exemption. Gosh, what if opinions change in the future? And now the things that we think are really totally normal mainstream, they change in the future, but we've gotten rid of that protection.
Yeah.
That's it can be dangerous. We have to be really careful before we do that. There's a concept, you've probably heard of it, called the Chesterton fence. This is where we don't take down a fence unless you really understand why someone put it up in the first place. And with all these things, I'm always very concerned about these things. If there's a fence and we don't know who put it up, maybe it's blocking a cliff, but we don't know. We'll just chop it down for no reason. We think we're happy. We think we're fine. We might not be. We have to have some humility, I think.
Very good, Mitchell. Thank you. Yeah, very thoughtful. Thank you for your call. You've got us off to a great start, and it is a difficult topic to frame. I've framed it this way, and I'm kind of sticking to it, but I appreciate how you view it as well. So let's keep it going here at 1-833-668-2577. We're just getting underway on Talkback today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What, if any, influence should faith or religion have on laws and institutions in this country? Where do you stand on a secular standard being the norm when it comes to laws and institutions in Canada? 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Sally is up next. Hi, Sally. Hi, Sally. Sally, are you there in Calgary? Yeah, I kind of hear Sally. All right. Let's try Eric in Cole Harbour then. Hi, Eric. You're up next. Eric?
Hi. Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, Eric. Thank you. Go ahead.
You know, this is a very good topic that you brought up, and I'm glad you had the courage to bring it up because a lot of people wouldn't put their foot in the pool. Look, when you look at a person's faith, we're told, I'm Catholic, I'm told to love and not judge, right? Now, if somebody is, you brought up the example, if somebody's living in a particular lifestyle and your faith does not believe in that lifestyle, that does not mean that you have the right to ostracize them when they're in the public forum, in the public workplace, getting a job, being treated fairly, being able to walk around the streets safe. That's what your faith. That's what your faith teaches you.
Okay.
Right. And now the government doesn't have a right to say that you can't say what you believe because of your faith. If you practice hatred towards people in the aspects I just talked about, well, then you're wrong. You're not allowed to do that. My standard is I let God judge people. If people are walking in a different path than what your faith teaches, well, I let God decide that, right? Now, the second thing is our judicial system is based on the Ten Commandments and is based on Judeo-Christian, right now, Judeo-Christian philosophy. So it's augured us well, you know, shall not steal, not kill, so on and so forth. Where the government is trying to say preachers can't preach what the tenets of their faith are, regardless whether you're a Christian, what denomination you may be as a Christian, or if you're a Buddhist, or if you're a Muslim, or whatever, is absolutely wrong. The government is telling you how to think, and nobody has the right to tell you how to think. Now, if I want to wear a crucifix in public, I'm going to. I don't care what the law says. That's my right.
Well, let's put that. If you just hold on, Eric. If you were in, this is a perfect thing. If you were in Quebec and you were working for the government in Quebec and you wore a crucifix, for example, around your neck, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. They'd fire you. And they have fired people. What do you think about that?
I think it's wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely wrong. Now, if
that's the law in Quebec now.
Well, that's the secular law. That's not the law of God. And as far as I'm concerned, God is supreme, not the law of the land. Right? If I want to express my faith, I'll express it. And if I feel that by wearing a crucifix, or if it's a Muslim wearing a hijab, I don't have an issue with that. Where the problem we have with religion is that people want to say their religion is number one, and they want to force what they think upon you. That's not how it works. You have a faith, you live your life according to that faith, and you let people live their lives. And at the end of the day, we'll see what God says when you're in the judgment seat. And this is a ridiculous argument. Freedom of religion is freedom of religion. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech. Who decides what hate is? It can be quite obvious, Rob, if somebody is speaking hatefully towards somebody, out of ignorance, then that is an issue. But we have smart enough people and a sophisticated enough society to put those type of people in their place and say, you can't do this. So if people should be allowed to live their lives out in public the way they having jobs, not being harassed, all that sort of thing. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it's wrong for the government to interfere. Just like Pierre Trudeau said, stay out of people's bedrooms. The government should stay out of people's faith.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. No, well said. We'll be right back after the news. Join the discussion, please, at 1-833-668-2577. 3 phone lines available on the topic. Religion and secular society. Today on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should faith or religion have any influence on our laws and our institutions, or should one neutral and secular standard be the norm with laws and institutions in Canada? What do you think? Where do you stand on that? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Heavy duty topic today. 1-833-668-2577. Have your say on Talkback. Lines available. Sean in Halifax today. Hi, Sean. Thanks for calling, Sean.
Hey, thank you, Rob, for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. What's your opinion?
Yes, Rob, I'm a preacher here in the city of Halifax. I'm a pastor.
Oh, you are?
And I'm just calling because there's great concern for myself and for other Christians who are truly born again, but believe the Bible to be the Word of God. And what you're seeing here is the destruction of this nation. You're witnessing it firsthand, and what you're seeing is what happened over 100 years ago by Karl Marx and others, in their Communist Manifesto and so forth, where religion is the opium of the people, and that's what we're seeing today. A communist state where there's no religion. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which Canada was part of that in the 1940s, talked that this is, the freedom of every society, the fundamental freedom of every society is freedom of religion. Is one of the articles of that particular document. And we understand our Constitution, which is, of course, the Constitutional Act of 1982, where our Charter of Rights and Freedoms comes from. We understand that talks concerning how we get all our rights from God, right? So the bottom line is that you're witnessing there's no such thing as a world that is without religion. Everybody has their own belief system, and so what they're trying to do, and particularly in Quebec, they are promoting their religion of secularism to the people. They're demanding people to conform to their religion of secularism. It's a religion. Don't mistake in that. And
well, I don't know if you would call it a religion. It's more of a shedding of religion than anything else in Quebec, with the history in Quebec of the Quiet Revolution and the dominance that the Roman Catholic Church had. I mean, from birth to death over the everyday lives of Quebecers, there was a quiet revolution in Quebec, as there was in much of Canadian society became more secular in the 50s and the 60s, but it was more pronounced in Quebec. But you are right, in Quebec now, Quebec is it is a totally from a government point of view, it is a secular state in which religion should play no role at all. And that is very much what was at work this week on Parliament Hill with the ending of the exemption for religious protection for a hate crimes prosecution. And you think that is what? A big step in the wrong direction, I guess you could say.
Well, I would go further than that, Rob. It's a colossal step in the wrong direction. And what it would do, they're out to prosecute preachers. Because I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm a pastor, I'm a preacher. I fear God. I don't fear the government. And I don't want to go to prison, but I have been in prison for preaching the gospel. And guess where? Right here in Canada. And the charges were dropped. The case was dismissed. And I'm going through another case, but not because of criminal. I'm suing the city of Halifax. That's another story to get into. But the bottom line is, what I'm saying is that It's not going to stop a preacher like me from preaching that what the Bible says concerning adultery and other sins of homosexuality, transgenderism. We love all those people. But it's called sin, and the Bible calls it sin. We want them to be saved from their sins through Jesus Christ if they repent and trust him by faith. But the government will not stop a preacher like me. They can lock me up for all they want. I'll miss my family. But the reality is that you're not going to stop true Christians and the people from other religions that believe they're in their faith. And what you're going to do is destroy Canada's very fabric, because the whole fabric of any society, Rob, is freedom. If you don't have that, you do not have a society. You have a communist state. That's all you have.
Okay. All right, Sean. Thank you. Thank you. I would just add the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, other Catholic media outlet, the Catholic Register, Christian advocacy groups as well. They have been making the case that eliminating this exemption threatens, to the caller's point of view, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. But also the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, in a letter to politicians, warned of, quote, substantial constitutional risks to freedom of religion, and, quote, all sermons, religious text studies, pastoral counseling, and scripture references may be exposed to misinterpretation, and, quote, it risks chilling legitimate religious expression. 1-833-668-2577, just on that particular issue, the hate speech angle. Rick is in Dartmouth. Hello, Rick. You're up next. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rick.
I was brought up a Roman Catholic, an altar boy, and all of that stuff. And by the time I got to, be an adult, maybe 18 or 19, and went to university and kind of thought it all over, I rejected the whole thing. And I'll tell you, one of the things that struck me in the early 70s were the religious wars that were taking place on the planet. You had your Jews and Arabs, and you had your Pakistan versus India, and these things, they are all religious based. So I guess a secular state wouldn't bother me if the same laws applied to everyone. As far as hate speech against religion, when you're an atheist, I don't know, have you ever heard anyone say those atheists, boy, we got to watch them. They're out there, and they're the first thing you know, don't confuse atheism with communism. Communism is an economic structure, and Karl Marx and those guys, they were doing their best from a philosophical point of view, but they didn't really have that together very much. So I guess I would say that if no religion was, North America was basically after colonization was a uni Christian state. There was very little else ever went on, but now we're a multi-religious state, and I think that that's probably a bad mix for Canada in terms of making any laws that need to be
right. So you want So you're in favor of limiting any influence or maybe any consideration for faith or religion when it comes to things like the delivery of public services or the delivery of public education or decisions that are made in a healthcare setting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I really
that's what we're getting at today. Fair enough. Thank you, Rick. 1-833-668. More examples that we can share as we make our way through the program. We'd love to hear from you today, though, on the topic. 1-833-668-2577. I believe we have almost every line available there. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's been very interesting to watch this all unfold, particularly on hate crimes, religious exemption, and how that issue played out on Parliament Hill this week, because it kind of came out of nowhere. I think the showdown on the issue caught a lot of political observers off guard. I think it even caught the Prime Minister off guard. The Liberals were obviously worried that one of their signature pieces of legislation, the hate crimes bill, was about to go down in flames, because it's still a minority government. They need the support of one of the other parties. So the Liberals caved on the Bloc's demand to end the exemption from prosecution based on firmly held religious beliefs, and they folded within a matter of days. I mean, one committee hearing was all it took. And now that exemption, which has been around for a long, long time, it's over. I mean, that's a bill that could get royal assent by the end of the week. The Conservatives are calling that an attack on freedom of religion, are quite alarmed by it all. Their phones are ringing off the hook, I'm told, by all kinds of faith-based groups and civil liberties organizations. I mentioned the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council. Most of the prominent Jewish organizations in the country, they have a different opinion. For the most part, they endorse the entire anti-hate crime bill because they hope it's going to do something about the surge in anti-Semitism in the country since the attack of October 7th on Israel by Hamas. Because this is a bill that puts limits on where people can protest. For example, it would be a crime to obstruct a place of worship or other sites where Jews or Muslims or other identifiable groups would gather. But in a letter on the merits of the bill and on the religious exemption, the Jewish groups, all the prominent ones, are saying the incitement to violence against Canadians we have witnessed since October 7th by radical groups and individuals must be addressed without undermining religious freedoms. As well, all the major civil liberties groups in the country they're totally against this anti-hate crime bill. 37 of them signed a letter to that effect, saying it represents a significant expansion of state power in the name of combating hate. And that's just one angle to it. Pat is in Kitchener, up next. Hi, Pat. Thanks for calling, Pat.
You're welcome. How are you?
Very good, Pat. Thank you. What's your opinion today?
Yeah, so my opinion with respect to this Bill C9 is you have a real preview of what's happening or what will happen in Canada in Europe. In Europe, there's around 12,000 people that are arrested every year in the UK for social media posts. Somebody was just arrested for traveling to the UK, to Florida, and taking a picture with a rifle. Somebody else was just a famous soccer player, Joey Barton, was just arrested and sentenced to 6 months for a social media post. Another individual was arrested for saying something derogatory in a personal text message between two individuals. The other individual reported them, and they were arrested. So my thoughts on this is that I don't think the government should have any business in regulating people's speech. Full stop.
Full stop?
Full stop. Full stop.
Okay.
The answer
what if they're spewing hate? What if they are spewing hate, though, against an identifiable group?
Who gets to decide what's hate? What does the government get to decide what hate is? No. No, the government shouldn't decide what hate is. There should be certain laws around speech. I can't, tell somebody to commit violence against you. There should be certain walls, around our speech. But incitement is essentially, I think, the mark. You can't incite people to violence. But hate is arbitrary. If you criticize Christians, I think that's hateful. Should you go to jail? Should you go to jail for criticizing Muslims? Even if you have good points.
Okay. I guess it depends on what you say.
If you say
does it
something
not depend on what you say?
Yeah, well, who gets to decide? A judge? A judge should decide. if what I am saying is hateful or not. Again, judges in the UK are deciding that certain social media posts are more offensive than actual rapes. People are getting raped and getting lower sentences for rape than for social media posts being offensive. I think it's crazy. I think it's insane.
You think it's crazy?
And
fair enough.
And the last thing I'll say is this. Not all religions are the same, and not all religions are equal. We live in a society that was built on Christianity. Other parts of the world were not built on the same principles.
Well, that may have been the case, but that's not the society that we're living in now. Right? That's not the society we're living in now, and it hasn't been for many, many decades. We live in a pluralistic, multicultural society where people practice many faiths. And I would point out, when it comes to this particular one, and thank you for your call, when it comes to this particular lifting of the exemption or ending of the exemption against hate, major religious organizations from many faiths are speaking out against it and are worried about ending this exemption, along with just about every civil liberties association in the country. Be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So again, back to our question today, 1-833-668-2577 here on Talkback. Should faith or religion have any influence on laws and institutions in Canada? Or should one secular view be the norm when it comes to our laws and institutions in this country? Just where do you stand on this? Increasing secularism, is that good for Canada? What do you think? Shane in Brooks, I believe, is up next. Shane. Hi, Shane.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, very good to hear from you, Shane. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, if we live in a society that is going to have to operate with hate speech laws, why can't the government just put a general penalty of $3,000 or $5,000 in the event you're found guilty of hate speech? How is it any different than impaired driving? For example, if I have 3 or 4 beer and drive down the road and get pulled over and I'm charged with a DUI, I face a $3,000 fine and I lose my license for a year. Now, if I do the same thing and run somebody over and kill them, my actions have caused a death. So now I'm going to face prison time, 10, 15 years maybe. Why can't hate speech laws be the same? This idea that somebody is going to lock you up and throw the key away because of something you posted on YouTube and you offended a crowd that seemed hell-bent on eliminating anyone's faith because they found out a while back what some people's faith says about their lifestyle. You know, and I'll just say one more thing. Nowhere in the Bible does Jesus Christ ever say to hate anybody for their lifestyle choice. In fact, Jesus Christ says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." So as a believer in Christ myself, it's not my job to judge my neighbor, but it's not their job to push their lifestyle on myself or my kids. And so you're going to have arguments.
That's not really what we're talking about, whether who's pushing what lifestyle on whoever. What we're talking about here, and I'm saying, and there are some people who feel, and some groups who believe there are people who will use religion as an excuse and as a shield to say hateful things and do hateful things, and that this is a natural extension of a law that already exists, and that even this exemption should never have been there in the first place. In fact, that is the dominant view and very popular view where I am right now in the province of Quebec, and it seems as though it has just been adopted at the federal level. That's it for hour number one. A full hour just ahead on this. This is Talkback.
It's time to talk back
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
So again, we have been asking, and welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback, by the way. Good to hear from you. Heavy-duty topic today. Faith, religion, secular society. Should faith or religion have any influence on laws and institutions in Canada? Or should Canada have a secular view when it comes to laws and institutions? We have been talking, for example, about ending the hate crime religious exemption, which was carried at a committee of the House of Commons. And next stop for that is the Senate, and they'll give it a once-over and then probably off to the Governor General for a signature on the Liberals' signature anti-hate law. There is deep concern in religious circles about that it could criminalize faith and deeply held religious beliefs. That's just one example, though. And that was done at the behest of the Bloc Québécois, which is carrying the secular torch on Parliament Hill, because this is very much the view of most Quebecers. And you think about what has been happening in that province, where you have a government that has passed laws, and they're very popular laws despite being passed by an unpopular government, but laws that are passed in the name of secularism and secularism of the state, banning public servants from wearing religious symbols in the workplace, for example. But in Ontario, there have been calls for a long time to end funding for Catholic schools. Many hospitals in Canada have a history that's deeply rooted in the church. The church used to run many hospitals in the country, and many of them will not perform MAID, for example, on religious grounds. And patients have made the news over the years because they've been transferred to other hospitals or other healthcare facilities because MAID wouldn't be performed in the hospital that they were in. And there have been legal challenges over that. And people have pointed out, well, look, most of the money to run healthcare, for example, comes from a provincial government. It doesn't come from the church anymore. It leads to the question, why should churches have any say in what procedures are performed in hospitals? So again, a lot to unpack. Again, I reiterate, I'd like everyone to be respectful as we talk about this today. It's a heavy-duty one. It can be emotional for some people. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Andre in Cambridge. Hello, Andre.
Yeah, good afternoon. First-time caller.
Hi, Andre. First-time caller. Okay, thank you for calling today.
Well, thanks for answering. Yeah, I'm seething.
You're seething.
I hear all these.
Okay.
It seems to be mostly Christians who are all worried that they're going to be persecuted and everything like that. Come on, there are more Christians in this country than there are anything else. They're not going to disappear, and that's fine.
Okay.
I myself am not Christian. I used to be, but I'm just I have fundamental differences with the actual religion and with a lot of the practitioners. I mean, look, if you're so against abortion, don't have one. But don't tell someone else they can't have one. Your freedom of expression ends where my rights begin. If you're so against gays and lesbians marrying, then don't marry a gay lesbian. It's that simple.
Okay, but is it? But now, is it really? Would it really be that simple, though? Would it really be that simple?
Well, but it should be.
Okay.
It should be. Leave me alone. Just look, Jewish people are. I mean, I understand that hate crimes against Jewish people are on the rise in Canada, and that's awful.
Oh yes. Yes.
But when was the last time you had Jewish people show up at your door, waving a Torah around, saying, "Here, believe this, or you will suffer mightily when you die"?
Okay. Well, I haven't had anyone from any religion do that to me.
You don't have Jehovah's Witnesses where you are?
Well, they haven't. I have been visited by Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, sure, I have. But they haven't framed it like that to me. Believe in, our view of the divine, or you're going to rot in hell. They've never said that to me. They've always actually been polite and kind. And when I say I'm not interested, they leave.
Okay, well, when my mother was dying of cancer, someone of that persuasion said that to her.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, yeah, she was too. And the thing is, it's that nobody is saying that you can't have the right to a religion, but your rights end where mine begin.
Okay.
So if
I come back to this. I come back to this. The concern that is being expressed. For example, Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council and 37 civil liberties organizations, just on this one particular aspect. All sermons, religious text studies, pastoral counseling, scripture references may be exposed to misinterpretation. It risks chilling legitimate religious expression. Shouldn't we be concerned about that? Should we be concerned about that?
What is the religious expression, though? There are passages in probably every major religious book.
Yes.
Whether it's the Old Testament or the Quran or anything that says if someone doesn't agree with you, kill them.
Yes.
It does. And now, here's hoping that someone isn't going to be, taking that literally, but it is there. And
well, I think there may be even something more, say, down to earth. Pastoral counseling, for example. A married couple goes to their priest, their minister, their imam. What we're thinking about getting a divorce, and whatever the faith leader says, well, if you do that, you may go to hell. What if we started to view that as a criminal activity?
The law goes that far?
It doesn't, but there are concerns that it could.
Yep. But there are concerns that other laws are going to be interpreted to that extent too. Okay, a religious freedom law is not, is not the only one.
Okay, I don't feel as though we're making much headway here, and we're right at a time. I'm sorry, it's probably me and not you. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Walter in Didsbury up next on Talkback. Hi, Walter.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Walter. Thank you. What's your opinion today?
Nice to talk to you again. Anyway, I have 2 points, right? The first point is that I wanted to say this so that Alberta could hear this, right? And if we're going to have a problem moving oil through Quebec, and they won't let us, and through BC, and they won't let us, the answer to that problem is to go straight north to the open sea on the top of the world. Now, the second point is it depends on what you believe when it comes down to religion and to the world, right? And so if you're a Christian, Jesus Christ gave up his life on the cross so that we no longer live under law. We live by grace. So the thing that they're missing is grace. Grace is a very powerful thing. And in the Old Testament, it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. In the New Testament, it's turn the other cheek, right? So grace is a very powerful way to live your life. If you live under the law, anybody breaking the law, and there's many laws out there, universal laws, man-made laws, religion laws, all that. You break a law, you're a sinner, and if you're a sinner, you're no good. And if you live your life by the law, then those sinners are punishable. So it comes down to each and individual person what they believe in. Do they believe in the law and they want to live by the law, or do they want to live by grace? Anyway, thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay. Well, thank you for your call. I'm not sure if we really got at the heart of the matter. There are just concerns with some of the laws that are being passed in this country and the direction that the country is going in, whether freedom of conscience and religion is under attack. That's what we're trying to get at today. And you think freedom of conscience and religion has traditionally been defined in this country as the right to entertain such religious beliefs as a person chooses, the right to declare religious beliefs openly, and without fear of hindrance or reprisal, and the right to manifest religious belief by worship and practice and by teaching and dissemination. There are concerns now that with the stripping away, particularly of the exemption for deeply held religious beliefs from a hate crime prosecution, that people will not have the right to declare religious beliefs openly without fear of hindrance or reprisal, and that the reprisal will actually come from the government. Now, the Minister of Justice, Sean Fraser, is out there, Liberal MP from Nova Scotia, who says there's nothing to worry about and that nothing is really going to change, and that people who have deeply held religious views are not about to be hauled before the courts if they say something that could be seen as hateful to an identifiable group, and everyone should just keep calm and carry on. But it does beg the question, if nothing's going to change, then why did they make the change? Which is what they've done. Herman in Calgary up next. Hi, Herman. Up next.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Very good, Herman. Yeah.
Good.
Trying to figure it all out, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to make it quick there. I mean, I told you last week, I'm not a big fan of religion, but no one, in my 54 years on this earth, all the hate I've seen usually is stemming from religion. One religion hating another. When we talk about hate, I mean, most of it comes from religion, judgment. And I've never had a scientist tell me I'm going to hell because I don't agree with them. Right? So I think that's a terrible thing too. People do, when they say, "Oh, if you don't believe what I think, you're going to burn in eternity." So,
right. But let's say somebody did say that. Should they be prosecuted for that?
Telling me I'm going to go to hell?
Mm-hmm.
No, and you won't be prosecuted. Our laws don't support for you to be prosecuted at all. Because if it's done in public, it's freedom of speech. And the government, when you're at work, you do what you're told at work, private or the government. Like, I don't understand this. People want to wear swords at work. Like, what are you, serious, man?
Okay. I don't know what's going on in the background there. It sounds like you might be at work, so it's kind of distracting, the noise that's going on. I'm going to move along. 1-833-668-2577 and have your say on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The National Post is reporting an update to this. Even now that the Liberals and the Bloc have agreed to remove this exemption to hate crimes prosecution based on firmly held religious beliefs or citing from a religious text, now the federal justice minister will become involved in trying to, quote, understand concerns religious groups are expressing over the removal of religious defenses from a section of the criminal code on hate speech. Again, this is an update in the National Post from Stephanie Taylor. Sean Fraser says his team has begun that work as Liberal MPs on the Parliamentary Justice Committee voted late yesterday, to accept an amendment from the Bloc Québécois to remove the defense from two sections of the code that target the promotion of hate. The change has not been passed into law. He said the conversations would be an opportunity to share our perspectives as to what the Bloc amendment would do and not do. Organizations representing Christian and Muslim communities have spent the last week expressing concern over the Liberal support for the Bloc move to remove religious defenses from Canadian criminal law by way of amending Bill C-9. Government legislation presented earlier this fall would make it an offense to obstruct or intimidate around places of worship and criminalize the display of terror and other hate-related symbols. So what stands out for me, just as a long-time observer of politics in Ottawa, this is exactly what you are supposed to do with a bill at committee, okay? You introduce the bill, you have a reading, it passes, you do that a second time, you kick it off to committee. What are you supposed to do at a committee? Oh, you're supposed to study the bill and hear from all kinds of experts, stakeholders. The government would usually call them stakeholders. Who would be stakeholders? Well, in this case, it might be civil liberties organizations, experts in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, constitutional experts, division of powers maybe between the provincial government and the federal government. You would certainly want to hear from faith-based organizations and hear about their concerns. And on the other side, you would have stakeholders who do fear that they could be the targets of hate. You would normally do that all of the committee, but they didn't want to hear from the committee. And every time they heard from the committee, the Liberals canceled the meeting. And instead, they agreed to go along with the Bloc because the Bloc was going to pull their support for the overall hate crimes legislation, Bill C-9. It's not a very good way to make laws. I'll just say it right now. Nelson in Halifax. Thanks for calling, Nelson.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
Now, Rob,
go ahead. What's your opinion?
The way that I look at this, Rob, is that, well, I'm a black man, and I grew up with all kinds of racism and all kinds of hate, whatever you want to call it. But for me, I've never found that a law changes any of that. All it does is force that underground. And then they start making their own little groups where they only can talk among themselves and this type of thing. I much rather have it out in the open. If you're a racist and you're saying something negative or hatred towards me, then I want to know who you are. Right now, they made it so if they speak up, then the government, our savior. And that's another thing there is the government has totally lost their way. For me, a government should make a level playing field for everybody in the country to do what they need to do to make a living. Now they're saying you should do this, you should do that. Like, you're not going to change anybody's mind. You're just going to drive it underground. And this was just done for political gain, as far as I can see.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for your call, Nelson. Be right back. Have to stop here. If I brought somebody on right now, you'd only have about 30 seconds. I just wanted to give you an update on what's being reported right now about how the Justice Minister actually views the legislation, which is really on track to pass in fairly short order here, thanks to the Bloc Québécois and the Liberals doing this deal. The latest breaking news coming up next, and then more of your calls on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Again, we've been asking, should faith or religion have any influence on laws and institutions in Canada, or should it be one neutral secular standard that's the norm when it comes to crafting laws and our institutions? When we think about religion and the criminal courts, religion and the delivery of public services, whether that's public education, public health care. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Frank is in Kitchener, Ontario. Hello, Frank.
Thanks for taking my call. It dumbfounds me how you keep repeating the point at hand and even get us an update, and you don't get a corresponding reply. First off, I want to go back a couple of calls. It does not say you go to hell for getting divorced in the Bible. It says God hates divorce. There's so much misrepresentation and misunderstanding that's turning people off to Christianity. There's a verse in there that says that says, many, many shall come in my name, saying, Lord, Lord, did we cast out devils in your name? Did we do wonderful works in your name? He says, depart from me. I never knew you. Turn the other cheek. What are you going to do? There's an axe murderer doing up your family. You're going to just stand there? No, it means you turn away from somebody who's assaulted you, you forget it, and you move on. What is your absolutes? Everybody has to go by a standard of absolutes or they're floating like a leaf. My absolutes are what's written in the Bible.
Okay.
And there's this, in the last half of Romans, the chapter Romans, there is a complete downplay on homosexuality as being sinful. Not only those that participate, but it says those who also don't care if they do it or not.
Right.
So
Now,
it
let
now,
me, so Frank, if I
I'm just ready to finish my point. So it now says, according to the law that you're trying to present to what's in the making, that if I say that to somebody, I can get charged with hate. The charter has given us the ability to stop an overreach from the government, the courts, and the police. All I have to do is say, I stand up for the rights of life and liberty. Look life up in the dictionary. What they're doing is not liberty, but it's a tyrannical response if they put this into law. When you go into court and say that and they want to stand by their law, you don't have a chance. They win regardless.
Okay.
We are communist. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to just build on your point, Frank. Let's say you stood on a street corner and said something like that. Perhaps you would be opening yourself up to a hate crime prosecution for hate against an identifiable group. And you don't agree with that. Fair enough?
And my defense is life, liberty, and protection. Life gives me the right to say what I want to say, and liberty is the right to carry on my life as long as I don't bother anybody else. They can't control what I think. So if they put this law into place, we can counter it with the charter because that is tyrannical.
Okay,
Done,
there may be
and that is,
there may be a charter. There may be a charter challenge to it. I would almost bet your bottom dollar that there would likely be a charter challenge to a law like this, and it would be interesting to see how that would play out at the Supreme Court of Canada if it made it that far. Frank, thank you for your call, though. Abe is in Champion, Alberta. Abe, up next. Hi, Abe.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Abe. Long time no hear. Good to hear your voice again.
Me too. Am I calling the Snow Gospel Hour? My goodness, people are silly. I tell you, I'm going to be up front. That guy Nelson who called in, you want to keep your enemies in front of you? Hey, I like that. I want the biggest to come out. I want to identify them. That man had a lot of common sense. Now, I'm an agnostic. And don't tell all my Mennonite friends, okay?
Okay.
I'll have more business from them if they hear about this. I've already had enough in my life of them coming to see me and asking me this and that. Now, the point is this. Agnosticism, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, whatever, they're philosophies. You can't legislate against that. People can say what they want. They can do what they want. If you don't want to hear it, go home. Go somewhere else. But to make laws regulating this is nuts. The world is filled with. I've met ignoramuses that'll say all sorts of stupid stuff. They figure because they've got a particular view on something, like the caller that just called you before me. That's it. The whole world. This is the only way to look at it. Well, you go ahead and have your view, and you're welcome to have it. But you can't make. When I look at, for example, at the kids at university, what kind of an education did they get? They're out there with Hamas, supporting them. You've got to be kidding. But hey, they got a right to do that. I think we really have to teach a little more problem solving in school, just to start with. But anyways, you can't do anything with people. You got to allow them to be the way they are. If they want to be ignorant, they're ignorant. If they break the law, if they, for example, three guys get together, Christians, and they want to overthrow a Muslim tank or a Muslim mosque or something, you have to arrest them and charge them for that. But that's got nothing to do with free speech. You want to hurt other people, you're held accountable. But, to hurting people's feelings because like the hurt my feelings that was on with his big, the two people with their big religious philosophy. But the point is, they got a right to that. If you're going to come into my store and you're going to come buy
Well, I guess the point is, do they have a right to that? But if this law passes C9, and it seems to be well on its way to passing now, will people have the right to do that?
Well, no, they won't, and I think that's wrong. Because agnosticism is a belief, and the Quebec government has adopted agnosticism as their religion, and it is a religion.
Secularism.
Well, you call it secularism. It's still a philosophy, and it's still a belief system. It takes just as much faith to me not to believe in God as it does to believe in God, or an hour, or whatever.
Okay. All right. Okay. I know it's a heavy-duty topic today. Some people are uncomfortable talking about anything that comes close to touching religion. But this is a significant development in lawmaking in Canada. And I think it's worthy of some discussion today. I think we've been doing that. We've been doing our best to try and flush it out with the callers' help. I appreciate all the calls and all the opinions today. And we'll hear some more coming up. 1-833-668-2577 on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Ernie in Kitchener is up next on Talkback. Hi, Ernie.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, Ernie. Thanks for the call today.
Thanks for having me. This topic it weighs really heavy on me, and I really feel like I can't, Rob. I can't make any death threats towards you. I can't go in a crowd like don't get me wrong, I can. And we already have these laws in place where if I go to church on Sunday and I just start screaming fire, fire, there's consequences and lots of that. I can't tell my boss what I really think about him already. And obviously that would cost my job more than from a legal standpoint, but don't we already have laws in place that protect these types of things?
We do. Yes.
So why are we changing it? Why do we need to? I see it more as I don't like what you're saying. So you know what? There's going to be consequences for that now. We already see what's happening within the UK, and there's 10,000. I'm not even sure the exact number. How many people are getting arrested for posts online? There was a woman that was arrested for silently praying. And my fear too is with this, Rob, is exactly what you said. If I cheat on my wife and I go to the pastor and I'm just talking to him about it, and he goes, well, you know what, that's adultery, that's a sin. Okay, so can I charge the pastor now for hate speech because he says that's what the Bible says? Because I was offended by what he said.
Maybe that wasn't the best example on my part. I'll take the previous caller's position to heart. Let's use another one. Let's say, because one of the concerns again from some of the religious organizations is that this puts all religious texts, all religious teachings, pastoral counseling. There's now a kind of a cloud over it. And there are serious, they call it a chilling effect on religious expression and religious belief. Let's say, for example, a young man goes to a pastor and says, I'm gay. Right. And maybe the pastor could suggest something like conversion therapy or something, or begins preaching about how it's not right, it's not biblical, or whatever the case might be, and it's against the faith, and you're dooming yourself to eternal damnation if you're gay. Well, what would the consequences be of that? Could there be consequences from that? Should there be consequences from that?
Well, just with that example that you just mentioned, it'd be the same as say the street preachers that say all gays go to hell or something like that. You know what I mean? Do I agree with that at all? No, I don't. But should they be allowed to at least have that? As long as there's not death incentives, if they're not saying you're going to die, I'm going to whatever. So, we already have laws that contain that. We don't enforce them very well. Don't get me wrong. There's been rallies in Toronto where they burn the Canadian flag and say death to all Jews, and there's been no arrest made from any of those big cases. But we already have laws to enforce that. So as far as the overreach here, I find it's going to get a lot more minimal, Rob. Not the severe cases. It's going to be I don't agree with that, and especially with parties in control. It's more or less going to be based on their agenda, what they're going to push, what they want us to believe, and don't you dare speak out. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily against the party, but if you have certain strong convictions, then you're liable to be arrested or to be charged with hate speech. And well, think about this too. You'd have a criminal record. Certain people get fired from their jobs, essentially with minimal things. We already have laws in place. Why this is an overreach of government control, Rob, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. There are civil liberties organizations that share your view. There are faith-based organizations that share your view. It's not been the view of the political party in Ottawa, the Bloc Québécois, which managed to convince the Liberals to get on side with this as a natural extension to the hate laws in the country, making the case that the religious exemption needs to go because it does let people use religion as an excuse and hide behind their religious beliefs and use it as a shield to promote hate and say hateful things against identifiable groups. Zach is in Calgary. Up next, Zach. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Rob. It's good to hear from you.
Hi, Zach. Yeah, good to hear from you, Zach. What's your opinion here?
It's so confusing to me because like nearly every aspect of our country and society historically is steeped in religion, like specifically Christianity. Trying to remove it is kind of like cutting a beautiful flower out of a garden and expecting the flower to survive for a long time. But I guess you specifically spoke about religion having an influence on our society. Just as an example, like Blackstone's formulation of innocent until proven guilty, you would say that's like the basis of our legal system, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's literally taken straight out of the Bible specifically. No any other philosophy or religious text. And I just want to know, like, how deep are we going to go in removing religious principles from our society? Like,
okay, well, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line?
Well, what we had before as a society that tolerates other cultures and beliefs while still holding to our historical origins and having like a united culture. I don't understand why I guess secularism isn't neutral. I think that's kind of what a lot of people have been saying on your show. And it is kind of, I think the fundamental issue is people think that we're shedding religion and we're replacing it with this totally neutral arbiter called secularism, which has historically never been the case. You just got to look at Mexico in the 1800s and you'll see how neutral secularism was.
All right, Zach. Thank you. We'll be right back with some closing thoughts, more of your calls. Lots of time to fit you in here. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's always heavy duty. It's always deep when you talk about religion and secular society. I would like to thank all the callers today for sharing your opinions. Let's take a few more here in the closing few minutes of Talkback. Peter is in Calgary. Hi, Peter.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, you're welcome, Peter. Go ahead.
Liberals, the majority of them are lawyers. And we can't lose that. I mean, they're putting a law together here that's going to be an absolute gold mine for the legal industry. And can you imagine putting up a Christmas tree up in your front yard and getting hauled into court for it because it offends somebody, and you lose all your life savings paying lawyers to defend you, and maybe it goes to the Supreme Court, but somebody has to pay the flipping lawyers that are going to benefit from something like this, and or create situations where they're going to make a paycheck, and it's just going to rob estates and hardworking, honest people in the country that are just going to get raped.
Okay. I don't know. The Justice Minister is saying it's not going to, it's not going to get to that point. It's not going to get to that point.
He's a lawyer saying that, and there is
he's
no
the
way
Justice
that
Minister.
Yeah, I know he is. I know he is, and it will escalate into something that we're just going to absolutely be so sorry that it's gotten to that. I mean, stupid lawsuits are going to come out of this. Absolutely stupid lawsuits, and it's the Canadian public that has to pay for it.
Okay. Well, I suspect that one of the lawsuits that's going to come out of it is going to be a charter challenge to it, and whether Canadians do have freedom of conscience and religion and expression, for that matter, in this country anymore or not, right?
I hope there's somebody with deep pockets that can finance that lawsuit.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling we might be talking about this for many years to come, Peter, to your point. Thank you. Let's take one more here and see if we can fit Ron and Lethbridge in to end things. I think you're going to have the last word today. Ron, hi there.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing?
Very good, Ron. Thank you.
Good. I'd like to read a quote from John Diefenbaker. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
I am a Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship in my own way, free to stand for what I think right, free to oppose what I believe wrong, or free to choose who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold myself and for all mankind. And I think that's a good way to end the show, remembering those wise words from a former Prime Minister of Canada.
Do you think, very quickly, is it under threat?
I think it is. I think millions of people have immigrated to Canada to escape the threat, only to find themselves in a threat now.
Okay. We'll end it there. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you to everyone. Heavy duty stuff today. I'm tempted to just play YouTube cat videos tomorrow during Talkback, but we won't do that. We'll come up with something else for you tomorrow. The latest breaking news coming up next on News Radio.